Away from there, well, starting today, an 8-year-old pupil who would have struggled for, well, his basic rights will finally learn in a clean classroom with modern learning tools. Now, in a 7 a.m. broadcast this morning, of course, specifically, the Enugu State's Governor, Dr. Peter Mbah, emphasized the central place of children in his landmark Smart Schools project, adding personal reflections to drive home his vision of the future. Now, he described the Smart Schools as the most personal and transformational effort of his administration. In his words, a new epoch in the lives of our children, a day of introspection, and a reminder that the future will be built by young hands. The governor recalled his own early struggles in the slums of Port Harcourt, with no guarantees and only education as the answer. He stressed that Enugu's children do not have to face the same hardship. He highlighted the benefits of the schools and urged people to take ownership of them, while noting that some are not yet ready due to challenges. He assured that timelines are in place to deliver them soon. Now let's take a look at highlights of the broadcast. Do watch.
Ndi Enugu, I bring you very warm greetings this morning, a day we usher in a new epoch in the history of our dear state and in the life of our children. It is a day of celebration as much as for introspection. Africa today is the youngest continent in the world. More than 60% of our people are under the age of 25. By 2050, our population will reach 2.5 billion. And 1 in every 3 young people on earth will be an African. This is a stark reminder that our future will be built by young hands. This is not just a statistic, it is a summons. It means that the destiny of African nations rests on what we nurture in the minds and hearts of our children. If we raise them well and leave them opportunity, when they inherit tomorrow, when they own it, they will shape it and defend it. If we fail them, no amount of slogans will save us. Tomorrow is here is not simply a catchphrase for Enugu. It is a covenant with that future. It is a recognition that the sovereignty of our state, of Nigeria, and indeed Africa, will be determined by the strength of our young people, their ability to think critically, to innovate, and to act with integrity. Our sovereignty begins in the classroom. It begins with how we choose to welcome the child into the world. And this takes time, care, and investment. I was not born into comfort. I grew up in the slums of Port Harcourt, where every day was a struggle and nothing was guaranteed. But one thing was always clear to me. If I could learn, I could grow. Education was my inheritance, the one possession that could not be taken away. I leaned into it with everything I had. Books became my ladder, study became my weapon, and in time, education and some street smarts became my passport to a life of possibility. At 28, I had graduated with a law degree in the United Kingdom after breaking through countless walls of economic circumstance. Barring a resilient spirit, I would not be standing here now. But does it have to be that hard? Can we make it easier for our young ones? Can we level the field for them? I have always believed quality education is not just a private benefit, but a public right. At home and at school, when a community receives and educates each child as a whole human being, it is akin to public service at the deepest level. The habits a child rehearses, attention, curiosity, patience, empathy, self-belief, become the civic habits of our culture. A school day shaped by rhythm, responsibility, and care quietly trains the nervous system for self-regulation and the social muscle for cooperation. Those capacities later show up as lower violence, stronger communities, and a public square that can tolerate disagreements without tearing itself apart. The school then is not just a service, it is a commons where the human village renews itself. When children combine skill with culture through science, story, math, music, creativity, connection, and play, they join the head, the heart, and the hand and become a wholesome, integrated being. With this interdisciplinary ferment, they become agile and respond to the needs of the age. We need artists who can develop a business, engineers who can think creatively, farmers with tech skills, coupled with a strong sense of trust, purpose, and civic identity. The result of this experiential learning model becomes our own social glue. And trust, as we're beginning to see in our beloved state, is the hidden infrastructure on which our democracy, economy, and neighborhoods quietly run.
And of course, there you have it, a special broadcast by the governor. Just highlights. For more on that, you can head on straight to Afia News on YouTube. The full broadcast is live now. If you're yet to watch it, please go on straight to Afia News on YouTube. And of course, this broadcast marks a transition to the smart school era in Enugu State. Now, joining us to assess this is political and economic correspondent Nnamdi Obaya. Nnamdi, so good to have you. It's like we see every day, Monday through Sunday. How are you doing?
I mean, I'm just as you saw me yesterday, on Saturday and on Friday. I'm okay, I guess.
Dramatically fine. All right. Let's take a look at this broadcast. I mean, it was a deeply emotional broadcast. We had the governor actually position the smart schools as the landmark project of his administration. It's deeply personal to him, as he said, and one of the most transformative efforts of his administration. He also went ahead and for the very first time, as we may even reflect on, to share his own personal time growing up in Port Harcourt, as he described it, the slums. And he feels that no other child has to go through the same hardship, even adding that parents no longer have to say goodbye to their children when they send them, of course, out of state, but instead can welcome them back to the smart schools. Now, he also did acknowledge that not all the smart schools are ready, but that the completed ones will begin, and that's why it's more of a transition to the smart schools than an overhauling or full-blown resumption, because obviously some are still in the works, and no thanks to Sujimoto, by the way. Nnamdi, what's your assessment?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned Sujimoto because I'm going to start from there. I think this was just a bit of narrative control. The smart schools are resuming. Nobody's talking about the kids. Nobody's talking about the schools. In the build-up to the resumption, we'll be talking about Sujimoto, you know, and it's been a very political issue. The issue has been heavily politicized. It's been a case of, right from the beginning, do we need smart schools? Why not renovate the old schools? The government is stealing money. Who are the contractors? The buildings are substandard. Oh, then Sujimoto happened. So the narrative has been very, politicized and been very confrontational. It's been a hot topic. So I think the governor was just trying to, get hold of the narrative and try and recenter it, you know. But look, this is why we're doing it. It's for the children. Education is the most important to us. During the campaign, he did mention that education was key for him. He mentioned that Enugu State was going to go well above the, United Nations guidelines for the amount of, revenue of the state that should be allotted to education, saying we'll use as much as 30% of revenue on education. Education was a key point for Enugu State, and the smart schools is a key thing. Like I always say, I think every word, the significance of that for me might be different from most other people. When I hear every word, what I think is walking distance from every child. You know, even if the one in your ward is not near you because you're on the boundary, you'll be near the one in the next ward. So it's really a walking distance thing. With regards to all of them being ready, there was no way they were all going to be ready. And the simple truth is that except Enugu State was going to grind to a halt every single activity and take 100% of money in the treasury and budget and put it towards the smart schools, there was no way the smart schools were going to be ready. Also, like I mentioned some time ago, because once this thing came up, I was very interested. One, because I'm also very keen on education, and secondly, because as you know, I have trust issues when it comes to anything government. So my eyes had been on it. And another reason why I didn't think that all could be ready is a thing of capacity. I know everybody claims smart schools. Recently in the FCT, they launched smart schools. Afia State showed us something they told us was smart school. Very disappointing. But why I knew they couldn't all be ready was capacity, like I said. Everybody is throwing out smart schools, forgetting the most important part. And I'll give Enugu a bit of credit there in the sense that the most important part, it's not even the building, it's not even the equipment, is the training of the teachers who are going to transfer this knowledge to the people. You're not going to build smart schools and have analog teachers. You're not going to build smart schools and have teachers who don't know anything about the internet, about technology, about modern computing, robotics. You have to have teachers who can introduce it to children at a very early age, and not people who, like you said in the broadcast, are cramming theory. And still speaking of teachers, another thing I picked from the broadcast, which I had also thought about, was mentioned, which is the fact that there's accommodation for the teachers. So the teachers live in the communities where these children are, which I think is very important because beyond being teachers, there's a role model factor that needs to come in. I know that they are smart schools and we're prioritizing, children learning to, incorporate technology into their thought process so that wherever they want to go in life, they are thinking technology. But at the same time, there are other parts of education. Education is not just mind, it's mind and body. So, things like sports and all that, there need to be PE teachers, there need to be coaches, and these people need to be within the proximity. And like I mentioned again, the role model factor outside the classroom is the teacher talking to these people, and extracurricular, students to be able to engage things after school hours during the weekend. So the teachers need to be in the community and know the children.
All right, let's go on a quick break now. And of course, when the morning crew returns, we'll continue to assessment, look at other parts of the broadcast as well, and focusing on the teachers, like you've rightly pointed out, and the children as well, whom the schools have indeed been. Welcome back. You're still watching the Afia Morning Show, and thank you for staying with us. Of course, we're still discussing the transition of Enugu to the smart school revolution. And of course, our correspondent is on ground, of course, gathering footage and monitoring the resumption at some of the schools here in the metropolis. Nnamdi Obaya, Afia TV political and economic correspondent, is still here. You gave your brief assessment much earlier on the show, of course. But right now, I would like to gain your input on how feasible you think these assurances are that a young pupil will finally be able to learn in a different, more reasonable environment. Or do you think it's just talk?
Well, we've seen the buildings built. We've seen the teachers trained. And whether the pupils will learn is now left to time. There's some things, like my mom would say, you can't build a house faster than cement will dry. Some things are time-based. They have to be timed. And the reason why a question as basic as this is still being asked is, I would say, the politicization of the whole thing. Nobody has asked any relevant question about the smart school issue. What we're hearing about is contractors and buildings and money and Sujimoto. The real questions I'm waiting to hear are, how many students have been enrolled? I've never heard anybody who is politicizing the issue ask that question. How many students are really being enrolled? We hear they should keep the old school, this is building new smart school. How many students, what is the policy on, moving from the standard local government schools to the smart schools? Nobody's asking that. Everybody's saying, will the smart schools be enough? Really, there's one in every ward. Of course, to be enough. In every ward, there is no other. Even your local government schools are, how many in a local government? Usually 1, 2. So one in every ward is quite different. So My question is, the wrong questions have been asked. Everybody who's politicizing it, everybody has taken their focus away on who the smart school is for, the kids. How many kids have been enrolled? I'm sure if you went out and asked, many people don't even know. I heard somebody recently saying, but you know, why do they renovate the secondary school? And I'm looking at it, smart school is not secondary school. If you understand the scale model, there's going to be one secondary school per local government, smart secondary school per local government in the next phase of this development. But it's for primary, so people are not even asking, you know, has anybody even asked, okay, this curriculum you want to put ICT, robotics, AI, all, you know, new good stuff into it. What's the curriculum plan? What is, I've not heard anything from the Basic Education Commission. Nobody has asked, has it been certified by the Ministry of Education? Like, the questions we really need to hear, I'm not hearing. It's just been typical Nigerian fashion. Politics, money, contractors. That's where the whole thing has stayed. So the actual soul and source of it has been ignored because everybody's interested in how much money, who was the contractor. But man, and I think this has been the issue around this thing. That
a very, very good point, Nnamdi.
Is it people getting too excited, or let me say, people not well informed about this smart school? That is the issue, because it seems that just few fraction of people are the ones talking about the smart school in Enugu State. Then some are just there, like they don't know what's happening.
You must understand that for people who prioritize, you know, who are very interested, majority of them, people who break their back to bring out money to send their children to school, usually put them in private schools. So many of them are not even looking at the government's option of education. A lot of people have basically closed their mind to government education. You know, people are making sacrifices to pay school fees that is 80% of the money they earn. People are selling family ancestral land. You know, people are doing borrowing, taking loans, doing all sorts to put their children in what they consider good schools. You know, people have so given up on government schools that they rather put their kids in mushroom private schools that are located in 3-bedroom flats because anything but government school. Because, you know, it's disheartening. You go around, you see, when you look at government schools, you look at dilapidated building. We were looking at Uwani Boys the other day when we went for the by-election at, you know, and the school looked like it had just, you know, it looked like it was after 3 days of bombing by the US Air Force. So you have all those issues where people see those facilities, they see children sitting on the floor, they see flooded schools in Nsukka, and everybody's like, you know what, nah, anything but this. So the people who would have been making noise, who would have been making inquiries, are not looking at government.
So now let's now follow up on that this week, and of course we want to lead with the authorities at the smart schools and try to get insights on this transition, because like I said, you made very good points. People need to know how people will transition from the average community schools to the smart schools, how many of them have been enrolled. You know, a lot of things concerning the children beyond the buildings and the contractors. So now let's talk about the children today. Let's not now politicize it even further. What benefits do you think the average child, and I won't say Enugu child because any child from anywhere might in fact attend a smart school, what benefits does this average child stand to gain by attending the smart school based on the special broadcast by the governor?
So I mean, it comes back to the definition of value. The best possible quality or the largest possible quantity for the lowest possible price. So the value of this for the children is the fact that an education, if they can get, if what the governor is saying is what they are offering, then they are going to get an education that their parents cannot afford for free. Which is supposed to be, if education is a right, it's what the government is meant to be doing. Providing education that if your parents were to pay for it, they would not be able to afford it for free. So that's the first value proposition. The next value proposition is the quality of the curriculum and the syllabus. I know it's good to talk about robotics and practical things, but while we are doing smart schools and doing STEM, we should also remember that integrating of modern technology should not just be into STEM. Not everybody will be a programmer. Not everybody will be an engineer. Not everybody will be a mathematician, a physicist. Not everybody will be a doctor. Some people will be social scientists, researchers, economic. Some people will be artists. I hope the plan is to let everybody understand that regardless of your field, this is how, from a young age, you can understand technology so that you can implement it into whatever field you would choose to take. If, however, they want to make them STEM schools, I think that's a bit narrow, and you'll leave a lot of children behind. Then the third part is, as much as they are smart schools, do they have play areas? I'm a big believer in the open field in the school policy.
Let's talk about sustainability as well. Now, with regards to whether it's just STEM, I mean, from the governor's address, we heard things about stories and, of course, creativity of the children. So that takes away the whole STEM narrative being the sole part of the smart school. But also about the free. Let's talk about the free. Of course, you know it's free. The textbooks are going to be free. The uniforms, according to the government, would be free. A lot of the things are actually going to be free. So let's talk about sustainability of such a free agenda at these smart schools as well.
I mean, the governor is in the private sector, so he understands the concept of trusts. When you create a living trust, that kind of portfolio, it's there and it's serving a purpose of continuously providing funding from dividends and interest accrued on the money kept in it. It has portfolios, it makes money. So in order to sustain the smart schools, there has to be some sort of trust, some sort of portfolio that is locked down, that even if the governor goes, payment for what the smart school needs is coming from that fund. It's held by portfolio managers. They use it, they trade, they make interest on it, they make profits on portfolios, and the dividends and profits accrued on top of it is what is used to run the smart school, provide the uniforms, pay the teachers, so that the smart school is not trapped in, the constraints of a budget, and the new governor comes and decides that education is not his priority. His priority is, something else entirely. And you now have an issue where the decline begins. It's not a one-day decline starts. All the things being rebuilt now, like the ICC, the hotel presidential, all these things decline because interest was lost by certain administrations. So if you want to prevent that, you need to have some sort of private equity fund manager, portfolio manager, some sort of smart school trust or fund that has money on its own. You rack up as much money as you can in it so that it becomes an entity of its own, overseen by a governing board, and its only job is to continue to use the money in that portfolio to generate funds for the smart schools.
Okay, let's talk about back to the teachers, by the way, because apparently when you look at some of our teachers in our rural schools and all that, you know that these are individuals that the tech savvy era is going to be hard for them to assimilate, so many of the things that they're going to be taught and all that stuff though. How are you optimistic about the corps of teachers we have in some of these our state schools? And yes, they went through training, but do you think it could actually reflect at the end of the day on these kids and as we're going smart and tech?
I think a lot of teachers who do not make the cut will be moved into other areas. If you've been a teacher, and there are still other schools that are not smart schools, and there are still education boards, education inspectors. There are still other things that an ex-teacher can do, administrative-wise and public service-wise. And if they can make the cuts, they can be moved into those areas. The truth is that for the smart school, you have to get people who understand, because you cannot teach what you do not understand. You have to get people who can be ingrained into it, people who understand. You see, people who understand the value, and people who understand that these things need to be used, not the teacher that will say, this expensive digital board, nobody should touch it, leave it there, let's be using Blackboard. And then you turn the things the children should use to learn into museum artifacts and monuments for them to be looking at in the morning. And their closest engagement to it will be when they're under punishment, cleaning it. So it has to be people who, as much as they will appreciate and maintain, also understand that these things are there for people to learn. The greatest advert the smart school will have is when it starts producing tech-savvy children. The advert for the smart school is the children. There's no building, there's no equipment, there's no teacher, there's nothing that will be the success of that school like the products that come out of it. When you know the smart schools are working, you will see two things will happen. One, you will start seeing reduced patronage in private schools. A lot of people who feel, look, I have a house in the village, my grandmother is in the village. Just remove my kids from the metropolis. Put them in my nice house in the village with the grandma and the caretaker, and let them be attending the smart school there. There's no need for them. A lot of people will find it easier to move their families. A lot of people have their families in the metropolis for reasons of, being close to a good school. Especially people who are sacrificing and they think education is their children's ticket out of poverty. So if they know that they can be here and it's much cheaper for their family to be, go back to Ezagu, go back home, just go and be there, be near, there's a good school there, you're in a safe environment, there's the food, everything, it's cheaper for me, it's more affordable, and you're not sacrificing on the quality of education you're getting. You find that you will have, it might not be very noticeable, but there'll be a bit of, a stall on rural urban migration, and you might even start seeing, for that age category of young kids, a lot of them moving back home. And if what they learn in school are things they can implement in their immediate environment, you now find people who become innovative in areas like agriculture, or some people decide that, why do I need to come to Enugu Metropolis? Let's set up shop here, and let's be building our stuff here in the village. Materials are cheap, rent is cheap, so you will start having, but it's not a short-term thing. It's not immediate.
It's good that you're evolving the economic values of, the smart schools already, by the way. And let's talk about the metrics we can use to measure the success of these schools, maybe in the next 10, 8 years, right? Yeah. Can you walk us through metrics we can use to, or in your own records, how to measure, or how you're going to measure the success of this project, come 8 years, 10 years time?
So in 8 years, 10 years, I think that's a bit too near, because somebody who is entering a smart school now, in 10 years will be something like SS1.
But then I could actually say attributes.
No, I know, and I don't want to use the metric of schoolwork. I don't want to use the metric of exam passing rates, because we've seen miracle centers, we've seen special teachers and special schools guarantee children A's and they can't spell their name. The metric I want us to use is, when these kids are done with secondary school, how many of them want to go, how many of them are going into actual, trade skills? How many of them are going to fabricate, or I'm going to agriculture? How many of them will be going, even if they're going to universities or polytechnics, will be going into areas, because it is after secondary school you will see the impact of the smart school, because it's at university, trade school, or from secondary school you want to go straight into your own business. That's when you will see, because at that early age it changes the way you think. What you do at that early age changes how you think completely.
Yes,
completely.
And in line with that change in, how you think, of course, your physiological development as well, how central do you think the place of the smart schools is in curbing crime in the state, for instance? Because in that same address, we also heard the governor refer to how important it is for the children to learn, be in school, to also help reduce crime rates. So how central is it in that entire process? So
boys have higher aggression, boys are more restless, boys are more inquisitive, and boys are more likely to be interested in, tech stuff. Also, the same boys, because of that pent-up energy, are more likely to be involved in more prominent negative vice. You see that most of the vice you see females involved in usually have to do with things of sex and things of drug use and things like that. But you find the more violent, the more abrasive crimes are the domain of men. This energy of these kids in the smart school, like I said, changes their thinking. The energy is being used. And men are also very competitive. You start finding people, communities start becoming known for things. If there's something this community is good at, maybe building local drones. All of a sudden, there's a local drone industry in this community because there's a competition among the small boys, and somebody says, everybody becomes like mechanic-minded, electrical-minded. So when that energy is in that place, you know, a lot of the people who are apprentices and are still engaged in crime are apprentices for daily bread or because their parents forced them there, not because they have any passion. It's a completely different thing when your passion is in something. Then you are, you know, again, men are very single-minded. Very single-minded. It's always like tunnel vision. Do one thing, then do the next. They are not naturally multitaskers. So you get them interested, you get them, you would see violent crime drop very, 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 very rapidly after a while because people's interests will change. What they need to make sure is that you don't send kids through smart school and not have something following up to keep that intensity. If not, you'll be training the next generation of people that will be creative at making weapons.
That's right.
So let us avoid that.
I mean, while our correspondent is on the field trying to gather insights on the process today, we have to also acknowledge that we've reached out to the Commissioner for Education, Enugu State, Professor Mbah'S, to seek insights on, of course, the exact smart schools that will be resuming today and the ones that are still in the works. Because the governor did say that in a week or two, those ones that are not ready would be ready. And of course, that's currently on the way. So I'd like to ask you this as well in line with that. How realistic do you think it is for those that are still in its, well, construction stages to be ready with that timeline? Again, another timeline. There
was something he mentioned, which was that they plan for contingencies. So maybe in areas where the physical structure is not ready, there's a contingency like we still have smart operations, but maybe not in that facility till that facility is ready. I don't know what the contingencies are. I'm just guessing. I'm not saying this is what the... But he mentioned that they had planned for various contingencies because anybody who has done project management knows that there is no way that you can ever guarantee, you know, that you will have 100% success rate. It is how well you manage the level of success you get that determines whether or not people see a project as a success or failure. So I think depending on what the contingencies are, what he said was that everybody would resume this term. Under what circumstances was not spelled out. So like I said, the contingencies were a smart school resuming. If the students are getting the smart experience, even if it is not in their permanent sites, it's still the smart school, because smart school is the teachers, the experience, and the students.
There was focus on the Center for Experiential Learning and Innovation, which is central to both the smart schools and the TVET college as well at GTC. Now, how would you describe an actual experiential smart learning experience? What would constitute a holistic smart experiential learning experience for you beyond board and marker?
I told the story of how much I hated physics in a particular year when you know, we had an interim teacher and who decided that, you know, first day of class we should come to the field and there was a pot of boiling water. Everything about latent heat, vaporization, evaporation, I've never forgotten, because before they started telling me about formulas and definitions, they had shown me boiling water and explained that you can see the points just between where it reaches boiling point and becomes steam. So those things stay, because I was looking at it. Next lecture comes to class, tells everybody you have 5 minutes, pick your rubber and start flogging, start firing yourselves. Boys, what do you expect? Start firing ourselves. So everything about elasticity, tension, tensile strength, I've never forgotten either. So an experiential learning is when people know why what they are learning is what they are learning, what it will be used for, how it is relevant. Most people don't know why they're learning what they're learning. They don't know how it affects real life. They don't know what the reason they are learning it is. All they do is they cram formulas and pour it out in the exam. So you find that you even have a lot of people who you cannot even really get good teachers, because if you don't understand something, you can't teach. A lot of people are cramming, learning and relearning, and you know, if you don't understand something, you can't even improve on it or innovate it, because it's when you understand it, you know where the issues with it are. So true experiential learning is not just having physical things, but knowing why they are there. What is this and how does it apply to this? When you are able to immerse somebody in the learning experience, that's when you have a proper experiential learning experience.
All right, let's go on a quick break now. When the monitor returns, we'll try to gain insights from our correspondents, find out what the progress really is at the Enugu Smart. That interview one last time to ensure that we heard her, and then we'll come back for a quick assessment before we wrap up. Let's take a look.
My name is Onyinye Omada, and We came here for the Smart School Just One junior secondary school enrollment, and we didn't meet anyone in the building, and I think construction is still ongoing, and we're just here waiting for information.
But nobody has addressed you yet?
No one has addressed us yet.
Is there anybody inside or just the construction workers?
Just the construction workers.
Thank you.
All right, and that's one of the parents who is eager to register her child at the Smart School, but she says that she's yet to be attended to at Enugu Smart School GTC campus. That all she's seen on ground, of course, construction workers doing some finishing touches. So I think that could be one of the Smart Schools still undergoing completion.
That is not ready to open, possibly.
Right.
Possibly.
So what's your take on that, Nnamdi?
I mean, there should be some information, and there should be like people there. Even if everybody is not starting on the first day, there should be people from the Board of Education to register children, to meet parents at the Smart Schools. There should be people from the local government, you know, from the Ministry of Education or the local government, have people from there, because this is in conjunction with local government chairmen as well. You know, we have local government chairmen, we have councillors. There should be people there at least to meet parents, you know. There shouldn't be a parent there in the morning ready to register a child and there's nobody there. You're a civil servant chilling at home or what? I mean, this is a situation where you have to be there, because lack of information, the vacuum will be filled. Somebody else will come in and give the information. Next thing you hear is, if tomorrow somebody comes and says, it's a scam, there's no Smart School. People went there, they didn't say anything. The reason will be because the people who were supposed to be there, the governor, the commissioner for education, they are not going to be at every Smart School.
That's right.
It's somebody's job. Where is that person? You know, so I hope that the Ministry of Education and the governor are taking this feedback into consideration, to know that maybe they need to send people out there to be at these schools, to receive people and say, oh, your Smart School is resuming so and so day. Your own is resuming so and so. So that people are not just saying, we were smart, there's no Smart School. There's no Smart Schools. When you don't provide an answer, people will create their own answers.
Okay, just briefly, how optimistic are you about this project? And at the end of the day, the production, the kind of students that are going to churn out, logical, smart thinkers, or dexterous?
Well, because it's education, I always have to have a positive mindset and be optimistic. I don't want to entertain any negative thoughts about things concerning education or health. And in all fairness, I think that what we don't understand is that in under a year, 260 schools, people are not looking at it from that direction. It's not one school. You know, there are people who finish their term and construct 3 schools. This is right. 260. So I think it's a Herculean task. They've chosen to undertake it, and the fact that they're undertaking it, I think that regardless of political affiliation, even if, like me, you're not a PDP member, it's important that we move politics aside and, you know, mindset of this is something, it's an inheritance for the next generation.
All right. Thank you so much, Nnamdi, once again for joining the show. We're already run out of time, but we will continue the monitoring exercise, looking at the transition so far from the regular education system that we know to the smart green schools. It's important for us to also reiterate that Afia TV has reached out to the Commissioner for Education, Professor Mbah'S, for insights on the exact smart schools that would in fact be a part of this transition, this period, but we are yet to receive a feedback, and of course that will be critical in our assessment of those ones that are indeed open. Until we meet again, same time, same channel tomorrow at 8 a.m. to bring you more insights on this monitoring exercise. I remain your host, Nathalie Uku.
And I remain OG Nwachuku. Have a splendid Monday and a week ahead. Bye for now.